The history books are lying to you. They talk about the explosion, the fire, the heroes, and the evacuation. They give you numbers. They say 31 people died in the initial blast. They say thousands died later from cancer. But there is one group they never talk about. Us, the miners. They brought us in from Tula and the Donbass. They called us Biorobots because their machines couldn't work in that radiation. The circuits fried, the batteries died. But human beings were cheap. We were expendable. Our mission was simple: dig a tunnel under reactor number 4 and pump it full of liquid nitrogen. The goal was to freeze the ground so the melting nuclear fuel wouldn't burn through to the water table. That was the official story. That was the lie. I was in that tunnel. I felt that heat. I tasted the metal in the air. And I can tell you this, we didn't pour concrete to stop the radiation. We poured it to keep something from waking up. When the military transport trucks finally slowed down, the first thing I noticed wasn't the ruined reactor. It was the silence. We were kilometers away from the explosion site, staging in a makeshift camp, yet the forest around us felt utterly dead. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed afraid to move through the pine trees, which had turned a sickly, rusty orange color. They call it the Red Forest now. Back then, we just called it the graveyard. As we hopped off the trucks, a strange sensation hit me. It wasn't pain, not yet. It was a taste, a distinct metallic tang on the back of my tongue, like I had been sucking on a handful of old coins or licking a 9-volt battery. I looked at my friend, Dmitri, a giant of a man who had worked in the coal mines of Tula with me for 10 years. He was rubbing his gums. "Alexei," he whispered, spitting on the ground. "My teeth feel loose." We were gathered by a young lieutenant who looked terrified. He wasn't wearing a protective suit, just a standard uniform with a flimsy white cotton mask over his mouth. He told us that the motherland needed us. He told us that the reactor core was melting through the concrete pad, and if it hit the groundwater, a steam explosion would render most of Europe uninhabitable for 1,000 years. It was a good speech, but I was looking past him, towards the reactor. The building looked like a beast had taken a bite out of it, and above the ruin there was a pillar of light. Not fire. Light. It was ionization, the air itself glowing with the sheer intensity of the radiation shooting up into the atmosphere. It was beautiful in a sickening way, a pale, violet-blue column that seemed to connect the earth to the sky. They gave us no lead suits. They said lead was too heavy for the speed we needed to work at. They gave us shovels, wheelbarrows, and those useless white masks. "Work in shifts," the officers shouted. 3 hours on, 12 hours off. Dig fast. Don't stop." The tunnel entrance was a nightmare of mud and chaotic activity. Before us, they had tried to send in robots. I saw them pushed to the side of the dirt road. German remote-controlled bulldozers, Japanese lunar rovers. They looked intact, but they were dead. The radiation was so intense that it scrambled their electronic brains within minutes. It felt like walking through a graveyard of technology. That was the moment fear really settled in my gut. If a machine made of steel and silicon couldn't survive here for 10 minutes, what chance did we have? We were made of meat and water. We entered the earth. The plan was to dig a 150-meter tunnel underneath the reactor block to install a cooling system. As soon as we got underground, the air grew heavy. It wasn't just the lack of ventilation. The heat was oppressive. It was meant to be 50 degrees Celsius, but it felt hotter. It was a wet, sticky heat that clung to your skin. We stripped to our waists, disregarding the safety protocols because the heat was killing us faster than the invisible rays. By the second day, the digging became a trance. Clang of shovel against stone, grunt of effort, squeak of the wheelbarrow wheel. But the deeper we went, the more the environment changed. The soil stopped looking like normal clay and sand. It became dark, almost black, and it had a greasy texture. I remember pausing to wipe sweat from my eyes. My sweat burned, literally stung my eyes like acid, and looking at the wall of the tunnel we had just excavated. There were veins in the dirt. Not mineral veins. They looked like capillaries. Thin, black, branching lines that seemed to throb faintly. I touched one with my gloved hand. It was warm, warmer than the surrounding dirt. "Dmitri," I called out over the noise of the jackhammers. "Look at this." Dmitri came over, his chest heaving. He looked at the black veins. "Oil?" he suggested. But he didn't believe it. He knew rocks. He knew geology. This wasn't oil. "It smells," he said, wrinkling his nose. Underneath the smell of unwashed bodies and diesel fumes, there was something else. A scent that reminded me of the butcher shop in my village when the power went out in summer. Sweet, rotting meat and ozone. "It's the radiation cooking the worms," another miner joked nervously. But nobody laughed, because there were no worms. There was nothing alive down here. Just us, and the thing waiting above us. As we pushed forward, meter by meter, towards the epicenter, the headaches started. It wasn't a normal ache. It felt like pressure building inside the skull, behind the eyes. And the sounds. The earth plays tricks on you when you are tired and scared. But I swear, in the moments when the jackhammers stopped for a crew change, I could hear a low, rhythmic thumping coming from the ceiling of the tunnel. Thump, thump, thump. It was too slow to be machinery. It was too organic. It sounded exactly like a heartbeat, magnified through tons of concrete and soil. We were digging into the chest cavity of the world, and we were getting closer to the heart. And the heart was waking up. On the third night, we reached the target coordinates. We were directly beneath Reactor Unit 4. The radiation dosimeters that the supervisors carried had stopped clicking days ago. They were either broken or maxed out. We didn't need machines to tell us we were walking in a death zone. We could feel it. My skin felt tight, like it was 2 sizes too small for my body. My joints ached with a deep, dull throb. Our orders were to reinforce the chamber and prepare for the concrete pour. But there was a structural anomaly. The ceiling of our tunnel, the concrete foundation of the reactor above, had cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the slab, and from the center of it, a substance was leaking through. This is what the scientists call corium, the elephant's foot, the most toxic substance ever created by mankind. A lava-like mixture of uranium fuel rods, graphite moderators, concrete and steel, all melted together at thousands of degrees. They told us it would melt through the earth like acid, but what I saw leaking through that crack didn't look like lava. We stood there, mesmerized and terrified. A black, viscous sludge was oozing from the fissure. It hung from the ceiling like a stalactite, but it didn't drip. It grew. I shone my headlamp on it. The light caught the surface of the black mass, and for a second, I thought I was hallucinating from the heat stroke. The surface of the corium rippled. "Turn off the light," Dmitri hissed, grabbing my shoulder with a grip that bruised. "What? I need to see," I snapped, trying to shake him off. "It reacts to the light, Alexei. Look." I held the beam steady. Dmitri was right. Where the circle of my flashlight hit the black mass, the substance agitated. Tiny, needle-like spikes rose from the smooth surface, reaching towards the photons. It was phototactic. It was behaving like a plant turning towards the sun, or a deep-sea creature attracted to bioluminescence. "That's impossible," I whispered. "It's molten rock and metal. It can't move." "It's not rock anymore," Dmitri said, his voice trembling. He walked closer, dangerously close. "Think about it, Alexei. Uranium is energy, pure energy. Graphite is carbon. Carbon is the building block of life. We mixed them together in a pressure cooker, blasted them with radiation, and gave it heat. We didn't create a meltdown. We created a womb." The thumping sound was louder here. It wasn't coming from the earth. It was coming from the blob itself. The elephant's foot was pulsating. A slow, wet expansion and contraction, and with every pulse, a wave of heat washed over us. It wasn't just thermal radiation. It was a wave of hunger. I can't describe it any other way. I felt a sudden primal urge to walk into it, to touch it, to merge with it. It was a siren song broadcast on a frequency that bypassed the ears and went straight to the brainstem. Suddenly, the mass shifted. A large chunk of the black sludge detached from the ceiling, or so I thought. But it didn't fall. It extended. A thick tendril, like an elephant's trunk, swung down and touched the floor of our tunnel. It anchored itself. Then, The texture changed. The smooth, glassy surface of the radioactive magma began to crackle. Blue veins, Cherenkov radiation trapped in liquid form, started to glow beneath the black skin. They formed a pattern, a spiral. "It's looking at us," Dmitri whimpered. He fell to his knees. I thought he was praying. But then I saw the blood running from his nose. Not a trickle, but a stream. The invisible energy coming off that thing was tearing his cells apart in real time. I grabbed him by the belt of his trousers and dragged him back. "We have to go, now!" But Dmitri resisted. He stared into the glowing blue spiral on the mass. "It's beautiful, Alexei. It's not destroying. It's changing. It wants to show us what comes next. After humanity. This is the next step." "It's death!" I screamed, slapping him across the face. The skin on his cheek sloughed off under my glove. That horror gave me the strength of 10 men. I dragged him away from the chamber, back down the dark tunnel. As we retreated, I looked back one last time. The tendril had thickened. It was drawing up material from the ground, absorbing the very earth we had walked on. And the sound? It wasn't a heartbeat anymore. It was a scratching sound, like something inside a shell, trying to break out. The reactor hadn't just melted down. It was hatching something, and we were about to seal it inside the earth, where it could grow in the dark, undisturbed. We made it out of the tunnel, but we didn't escape. You never really escape the zone. It stays in your marrow. The medics took Dmitri immediately. They put him in a plastic tent. I wasn't allowed to touch him. I watched through the clear plastic sheet as he disintegrated. That is the only word for it. His body forgot how to hold itself together. But until the very end, he wasn't screaming in pain. He was whispering. I bribed a nurse with a pack of Western cigarettes to let me sit near the tent. I needed to hear what he was saying. I needed to know if I was crazy. "The concrete," Dmitri rasped, his voice sounding like dry leaves blowing over stone. "Don't pour the concrete, Alexei." "We have to," I said, leaning close to the plastic. "We have to stop the radiation." "No," he wheezed. A black fluid, the same color as the thing in the tunnel, bubbled at the corner of his lips. "It's cold out here. The world is cold. It needs the heat. The reactor is its shell. If you pour the concrete, you are building it an incubator. You are keeping it warm. You are protecting it." He grabbed the plastic sheet with a hand that looked like a burnt claw. "It told me, Alexei. It promised. If we let it grow, we become part of it. Eternal. No more pain. No more cold." He died an hour later. They buried him in a lead coffin, soldered shut. They poured concrete over his grave, too. The next morning, the order came. The trucks arrived, thousands of tons of concrete. We were ordered to pump it into the tunnel we had dug, to fill the void, to seal the elephant's foot, forever. I stood by the mixer, watching the grey sludge flow into the pipe. The other miners were cheering. They thought it was over. They thought they were heroes saving the world. But I felt like a jailer, locking a monster in a room full of food. I thought about what Dmitri said. An incubator. Think about it. We built a sarcophagus around the reactor, a massive shelter of steel and concrete. We sealed it off from the air. We trapped the heat inside. We created a perfect, isolated environment with an unlimited food source of uranium and graphite. Years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, I tracked down a scientist who had been part of the expeditionary team that entered the sarcophagus in the late 90s. He was a broken man, dying of thyroid cancer in a small apartment in Kiev. I brought him vodka. I asked him about the elephant's foot. He told me the official photos, the ones you see on the internet of the grey, wrinkled mass, are real, but they are misleading. "It moves," he told me, his eyes wide with fear. "Every time we went down there to measure it, it was in a slightly different position. It's not flowing like liquid, it's crawling, moving deeper into the basement." He took a shot of vodka, his hands shaking. "And the samples we took, we put them under the microscope. The crystalline structure, it's not random. It's ordered, like DNA, but based on silicon and heavy metals, not carbon." "What does that mean?" I asked. He looked at me, and I saw the same terror I had seen in Dmitri's eyes. "It means it's not waste, my friend. It's an organism. A baby, and it's eating the foundation of the building. It's growing stronger. I left him there. He died a week later. Now they are building the new safe confinement. A bigger arch, a bigger tomb to cover the old one. They say it will last for 100 years. They say it will keep us safe. But sometimes I dream of that black tendril reaching out for the light. I dream of the blue veins pulsing. I dream of the heat. We didn't kill the beast of Chernobyl. We didn't bury it. We just built it a nursery, and we left it alone in the dark with everything it needs to grow. And one day, when it's big enough, when the shell cracks, it's going to come out. And it won't be hungry for uranium anymore. It will be hungry for us. I am an old man now. The doctors say I have less than a year. The radiation takes its toll slowly, but it always collects its debt. I think the thing under the reactor wants me alive. It wants a witness. Sometimes, at night, I put my ear to the ground in my garden. I live thousands of miles away from Chernobyl now, but if I listen closely enough, I can still hear it. Thump, thump, thump. It's getting stronger. The ground is getting warmer. This is Captain Nightwhisper. If you ever visit the exclusion zone and you feel the ground vibrating beneath your feet, don't assume it's a train. Run, because the shell is breaking and the bird is about to fly.